Aloha artists, Miss Maggie here. Welcome back to the next step of creating our native animal portrait. Let me show you what your final work of art is going to look like after all the steps. Here is one that I created of the alive ke'o in the wetland with the plant akuli, which I added in the foreground. And so this is a portrait because this animal is the main subject of the artwork, and I really worked to show you its characteristics. In a portrait of a person, you might show its personality, and you might have a little bit of the sense of an animal's personality from a work of art. But if you are looking at something as a scientist rather than as an artist, then you would look closely for the characteristics. What do I notice about its head, its beak? How does its body sit on the water when it's swimming? How does this animal really look in its habitat? And of course, we'll be adding a plant that is of your animal's habitat in the foreground on another piece of paper like this. So today what you're going to do is you are going to have a finished drawing of your chosen native animal, and we're going to transfer that drawing from drawing paper to your watercolor paper so we can paint your animal next week. So here are the supplies that you're going to need for this week. You are going to want a small drawing paper and also a small watercolor paper. And we're going to need a pencil, an eraser, and you're going to need a piece of tape. Doesn't have to be blue masking tape. Any sort of tape is fine, but that's what I have. And you're going to need a window during the daytime. I'll explain what we'll be doing with that when we get there. Okay, so for now, go get your drawing paper, pencil, eraser, have that watercolor paper handy for afterwards, as well as that tape. Meet me right back here with those supplies, and I'll see you then. Last week, we practiced sketching a whole bunch of different native animals because everyone's going to be drawing and painting different native animals from different habitats. So today, you're not going to be just following me along line by line. You are going to be creating your own work of art, but I'll walk you through the steps so that you end up with a drawing that you are proud of. So the first thing that we need is you need to know what animal you're going to draw, an animal native to Hawaii. You also need to know what habitat that animal is a part of. And you especially need the photo that you are going to draw from. This is a color photo that you will look at next week when we paint as well. I have a couple links just above this video where you can find photos of different native animals. Before we move on, we need that information. One thing you will need later as well is a native plant from your animal's habitat too, but we're not drawing any plants today. So concentrate on what photo you are drawing from of your animal and know what habitat your animal is a part of. Okay, do you know what animal you are going to draw? Do you have your photo picked out? I'm going to show you the photo that I worked from for my alive ke'o. This one right here. Now, you notice there's things I changed about the artwork, right? I really liked how this one of this bird showed its face, and it showed its face at the side. I felt like it would be a really wonderful portrait. But from my research and from my experience, I know that these are wetland birds. They don't just hang out in the grass. They are often at Kealia and Kanaha, and I've seen them swimming. So I put this bird in the wetland to better show its habitat. I also cropped the photo, because having all this grass in the picture, what does that really tell us about the animal? Not much. The animal is the subject of your artwork. So we want to crop in and make the animal large. And so I cropped in like this and even brought this part up like this. And so look at your picture and figure out how close can you crop in to make it really be right for creating a portrait of your animal. With portraits of people, sometimes it shows the whole body and sometimes it just shows the head and shoulders. And so with your animal, you can decide. What if you're doing a very different animal, such as this native damselfly? Well, I think for this one, I would keep the whole animal in. It's going to be different with different animals. You need to pick how to best show the characteristics of your animal. So, before we move on, know how you are cropping your artwork. I'm going to crop in like this. Maybe this one I will do differently and put the legs in, but it'll be standing in the water is what my plan will be for my Alai Ke'o. And I have my drawing paper now. For portraits, most often they are vertical. But you know what? Human beings are set up vertical. We stand tall most of the time, right? So look at your animal. Should your paper be vertical or should your paper be horizontal? You decide. And right now we are on the drawing paper still. We are going to sketch our animals and get the lines that we want. And then once we have the lines that we really want, we'll transfer it to the watercolor paper. So you're drawing a different animal, of course, but what are the things that we need to know about when we draw? Well, we want to, just like last week, find the shapes that make up your animal. And so I'm going to see that I have a big round shape here. With birds, I also always looked for what shape is the head and where does it go. And that circle is just straight above the big circly blob of the body. So I'm noticing that, and I notice more things I'll add in. But I also need to make sure this time that I draw large to fill the paper. If I start drawing and my bird is that big, not going to work. That is not the size we're going for. So that's why we're sketching. Draw lightly so that you can change things as you need to. So I'm going to make the body of this bird, which is a big circly blob. It's not exactly a circle. Finding what that is. And this time I'm going to leave a little bit of space for the legs. And I see that the head is straight up over the center of that. And I'm looking at what size is it compared to the body and how much space is in between. That's too much space. I need to make it more like that. I'm finding the shapes. Okay, and I'm drawing lightly so that I can get the lines that I want. See how sketchy this is? Doesn't look like the bird yet, but I'm finding my way there. I draw lightly to begin with because I keep noticing more and I adjust my lines as I do. Look closely to see where each detail or shape is compared to the other ones, and as you look, the artwork will come together. So when you are sketching, 1, find the shapes that make up your animal. 2, draw large. Fill the paper. You can even go off the paper. And 3, sketch lightly so you can make those changes. I can keep adjusting it and getting it to more of what I want. I know that that dragonfly still needs some work, but I am working on finding the lines and shapes it's made out of. So with either of these, I'm going to keep looking closely and putting in the details so that we can really see what's important about this animal. So, when you think you have something done for your animal, what about the setting, the habitat, the background? What's happening behind? Now, if something is in the background, it doesn't need too many details to help us know what it is. For instance, can you tell that this is a wetland? We've got water, but it doesn't look like waves in the beach. And I've got little bits of growing things there, but very few details to show what it is. The color did a lot of it, but still, I thought about how I was going to show the wetland. This Alaikeo is instead in very shallow water, but I think similarly, I will put a little bit of land sticking out here, and I'm going to give it some plants coming there, and then I think it's going to have some trees far in the distance. I'm thinking like at Kealia, the way that there are kiawe and other trees around, but it's definitely water nearby, and maybe I'll have it so I can see a little bit of the West Maui Mountains there far in the distance for this one. Ooh, I like that. How about this one? So this one's a little bit more of a pool here, and I have some trees in the background there. And so again, the backgrounds, it doesn't need a lot of detail, but choosing your details will tell us a lot about where this animal lives. Now, before you say that your sketch is done, there is a really important step. We are being both artists and scientists, and so we need to look at our drawings and our photos and compare them. We want to find what is similar and what is different between the drawing and the photo. And this will help you know what other changes to make. I'm going to compare my drawing and my photo. I am going to look at these two, what's similar, what's different. And I'm also going to look at my drawing and think, what part am I proud of? And so I am really happy with how I got the shape of the body, because it's kind of just a blob, but I really did notice the subtle details of where it comes in, where it bulbs out, because those are really its wings on the side of the body, and those are its legs. And so those are important parts. And I'm noticing that there are some differences between these. Like, I think there's something up with where I put the eye that I want to figure out and change a little bit. Ooh, I also noticed a detail just down here right now. I noticed how there's a line right there and then the leg. And what happens when I start comparing the photo and my artwork really closely? Well, I notice where I need to revise. I notice what exactly that beak needs in order to look more like the Alaikeo, and I make my lines clear. Okay, so as I said, comparing your artwork and the drawings is really important. That is how we level up your artwork so that it really expresses your animal. I did the same thing with my damselfly. Look at your artwork and notice what parts are you proud of. Maybe they're just small details because you've worked hard at this, but also notice those parts that are different. I haven't drawn that many insects before, so I'm having to look really closely, and I'm noticing that some parts are smaller than I thought, and some parts are larger than I thought, and I keep making those adjustments. Okay, so stepping back and comparing our animal and the photo really helps us notice what parts to revise. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been revising the details. I've been making those adjustments. And so I'm really happy now with how this one has turned out and this one has turned out. I revised them using what I noticed when I compared them, and I worked on making those final lines clear. Once I have made all of those lines clear, I'm ready for my watercolor paper. This is when you are happy with all the lines on here. And this paper, it might have had some lines that were hard to erase. It might have some parts that it took a lot of work to get there, and you can kind of tell when you look at the paper. That's fine, because we are going to transfer this onto this. If you remember last year in art class, we used a black transfer paper to take your drawing and transfer it onto the watercolor paper. Well, we're going to do that this time, but we don't have the transfer paper, so the next best thing is a window. So, what you're going to do is you're going to find a window, especially one where the sunlight is coming through. That's the best. But any window during the daytime will probably work. You're going to take a little bit of tape. And now you're going to need 2 pieces of tape, and this tape I love because it's easy to take off your artwork. But if you have other tape, this is what you want to do. You want to stick it on your clothes a couple times so that it will come off your artwork without tearing it. So I'm doing this a couple times. Keeps your artwork safe from tears because we want our final product to be amazing. And pretend that this here is the window. You're going to take your artwork and you're going to tape it to the window. And then you're going to take your watercolor paper and you're going to tape it right over that paper right there. And then if this was a window instead of a desk, you would be able to see those lines right through, wouldn't you? And you're going to trace carefully over those lines so that all of those clear lines from here showed up on here. Okay, so I taped my artwork into the window. I looked closely and I traced the most important lines. The last piece of this is to compare my drawing and the watercolor. I'm going to take this tape off so I can really see what they look like. Take the tape off gently, gently, gently. Had a little extra piece I needed there. And see, are there any lines that need to be made better? Sometimes when we trace, we don't see certain things. Maybe the line was light, or maybe our pencil slipped in a funny way. I was drawing at kind of a funny angle, so I had trouble reaching some of the lines very well. So I'm just looking and noticing, following over everything to see what are the lines that I really want. Yeah. Okay. I think that it is just about there. So keep this artwork safe for next week, because next week we're going to Sharpie and then paint it. And here is your reflection question. What detail in your native animal did you feel was the most important to get right so that when people look at your portrait, they know what native animal your portrait expresses? And what helped you get that detail right? What worked for you to draw it accurately, to express your animal as an artist and as a scientist? Okay, remember, keep your artwork safe for next time. This was just one step on your way to having a beautiful, finished work of art. I look forward to doing that with you next week. Ahui ho!